The rules and all that kind of thing of how we're going to be operating. So welcome to the all candidates debate. I think we all pay respect to the reason why we're all here. This debate is being put on by 5 associations: Mount Colony Community Association, Gayla Baraneski and Marlene Davey, over there. Wilson Community Association, Kayla Horn, I believe is over the back. The Gordon Resident Association, Chris Barre Skelton, here in the front here. Cabot Bay Resident Association, Eric Daly. Eric is knows here somewhere up to no good. Okay. And Flagler Cedar Hill, my name's John Schmuck, and I'll be the timer along with my colleague Art Beck. So we want to do a thank you to St. Aidan's, and just so everybody knows, if you have any washroom requirements, where you came in, there's a staircase, and we take the staircase down to the washrooms. Our moderator tonight will be Dr. Deborah Curran, UVic Faculty of Law. Our candidates will be introducing themselves. So they'll have 60 seconds to introduce themselves. So just to understand the rules, make sure don't fall it down. When there's 15 seconds left, you'll get the yellow sign. When you're out of time, Mark Beck will be standing up, flashing you the red sign saying stop. Yeah, we'll try to keep this as easy as possible. There will be 16 questions from the committee that have already been chosen. They have not been given to the candidates in advance. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question. Now that is going to take 1 hour in itself. So we're going to be fairly strict in our time. The audience questions, again, if you haven't had a chance, grab one of these cards, which are on the entranceway there, and we'll make an announcement once we get about half an hour in. And these will all be collected if you haven't already turned them in. Only a few of these will be chosen. They'll be the ones which haven't already been answered by the committee. The ones which have not been addressed will be passed on to the group holding Thursday night's debate in Church of Nazarene. So your questions will not be going to waste. Brenda McBain, here at the front, will be the moderator Thursday night. So she'll be getting the questions that you do submit. You'll have, for closing remarks, you each have 90 seconds. And again, the same rule, you get the yellow card with 15 seconds left, and the red card when it's time to stop. So without further ado, pass this on to Dr. Deborah Curran.
Thank you very much, John. Welcome, everyone. I'm pleased to be here to moderate tonight. I really am a glorified timekeeper, but as someone who teaches rules in the Faculty of Law, I should be able to do that with not too much effort. I am a proud citizen of Saanich. My family and I live on Pierce Crescent, and it's a pleasure to be here. I just wanted to fill out the rules a little bit with a few other points of decorum for tonight. So not just keeping in time, but if you would limit your remarks to your platform and not to other people's platforms or to what council has necessarily done in terms of personally. Certainly, a sort of council or the Saanich as a whole is certainly fair game, but not individuals. Each of you will start answering a question. So what I mean by that is you'll each get a turn to be the first person to answer a question or to introduce yourself or to conclude. And so what that means is we will simply move in line from 1 to 2 to 3 as we go through the evening, ending up with Marsha, I believe, who will be concluding first. So when you do, in fact, not everybody has a microphone, so when you're finished, and would you please just pass it off so I don't need to then thank you and say your name? We can just do this in very simple order. I'm also in particular kept in line tonight in my role because my mom is here, who's also a citizen of Saanich. And my dad was an Anglican minister for most of my youth, so I'm very comfortable in this particular venue. So without further ado, Robert Whitson, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. It's a very great pleasure to be here. As Cece is a wonderful crowd. I am Rob Whitson. I've been involved in Saanich since 1988 when we moved here and our first daughter was born. We still live in the same house, in the same neighborhood. And you know what? It's been great to watch how that neighborhood has grown. And that's what fascinates me the most about Saanich. Saanich is a place that's evolving, it's changing. And I hope to be part of that change through the Saanich Council. I think that we have to understand there's all kinds of complex issues that we have to face, from traffic congestion to density to sit trying to protect our green space. Those things are extremely important to me. But also, so is your well-being. How well are you living? Are you living comfortably? Are you struggling to live? I need to know that. You need to tell me what you need to have done. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the residents of Sandwich, my name is Art Fuller, and for over 30 years, I've dedicated to one thing, and one thing only, and that is community service. Be it through Block Watch, my 17 years there, be it through 10 years on the Quadra Cedar Hill Golf Course Committee, be it through my 6 years of involvement with the Quadra Cedar Hill Community Association, be it through doing numerous things in the community. And the only reason I did it was to help the community grow, to help it grow and become better. When I got the call to run for a councillor, I thought, wow, this is an honor, it's a privilege to serve the residents of Sandwich. And that's what it should be. It should be people who have moral compasses and who believe in the future of a great and growing Sandwich. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike Gagan. You may know me from CFAX Radio Monday mornings with Mike Gagan and on the Adam Sterling Show. You may also see me Saturday afternoons on CTV News Channel providing political commentary. I first moved to Sandwich in 1985 to attend the University of Victoria, where I got my bachelor's degree in economics. And in that time, I have lived in other municipalities, including Langford, where I lived for 7 years, and for 6 of those years, I was on Langford's Planning and Zoning Committee. I'm very pleased that I've been endorsed by Langford Mayor Stu Young. I've also been endorsed by Colwyn Councillor Lil Hachong, and I've also been endorsed by former BC Green Party leader Stuart Parker. I've also received support from a wide number of different groups, including the BC Building Trades. I'm very keen in serving on Sandwich Council for 3 simple reasons. We need more housing, our taxes are out of control, and we need much greater accountability.
Good evening, I'm Karen Harper. I'd like to thank the organizers of the event and all of you for coming out this evening. For the past 3 years, I have regularly attended Sandwich Council, and I've spoken with many of you about excessive budgets, about the EDPA and its heavy-handed implementation, and about local area plans that are seriously out of date. I'm running because Sandwich needs strong fiscal leadership. Working with an exceptional executive team at the BC Pension Corporation, I spent the last 10 years of my working life creating and managing an effective, efficient, and responsive Crown Corporation. Excuse me. If elected to Sandwich Council, I commit to bring the fiscal expertise and accountability to Sandwich, to respect private property rights in conjunction with environmental stewardship, and work collaboratively to update local area plans. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. And I guess we asked the question, why are we all here? And obviously one answer is that you all want to know who we are. Well, you guys are all Sandwich residents. I'm a Sandwich resident, and I'm here to work for you. 53 years old, been a Sandwich resident for 20 years, married, have 6 children, 5 boys of my own, and an adopted child from Nepal. I'm currently a professional senior coach. Sorry? Oh, there comes the my apologies. I'm a senior project manager with BC Emergency Health Services. Sorry. BC Emergency Health Services. I've a co-chair with the advisory design panel, and I'm here to get things done for you, the residents of Sandwich. Thank you. Keith, sorry.
Hello everyone, thank you for all coming out tonight and spending your Tuesday evening with us. My name is Sean Newby, and I'm hoping for your support on September 23rd. I was born and raised in Saanich, and as many people here know, I spent a lot of my 20s trying to become a rock star in Vancouver, and hence the tattoos. But now in my 30s, I'm a proud homeowner in Saanich, and I worked all of my life in the private sector, and currently I work in the construction industry. My experience in the retail industry, the music industry, and as an owner of a renovation company allows me to approach decision-making through the lens of business owner as well as a homeowner. I will work to ensure we achieve sustainable growth in our community while maintaining its environmental integrity. We live in an amazing place, and we can make it even better. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Natalie Chambers, mother, conservationist, author, environmental activist with a track record that you can depend on. I am a long-term resident of Saanich and organic farmer at Madrona Farm for the last 15 years. We grow food for approximately 4,000 customers in Saanich and beyond. We have raised almost $3 million for conservation in Saanich, and I have managed 3,500 people's money successfully. Like Victor and I believe in the big audacious dreams of community, the power of the people, and a small local committee that can change the world. I believe that the taxpayer should not be subsidizing damages by non-permitted industrial and corporate use. I believe that we cannot build ourselves out of this housing crisis. Saanich municipality needs to be the exemplar of all exemplars, and I believe we must all exercise our rights of ownership with thought to the future. I stand with the people I've met door knocking, and some of you living in cars and parks. Thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you everyone for coming out and giving your attention to this election. My name is Ned Taylor, and I've lived in Saanich my entire life. I love the community that I've grown up in, but I think there are some serious issues that we need to address in order to keep this place as incredible as it is for our future generations. My priorities as councillor will be to, first off, continue Vic Dermott's exceptional environmental work. I've worked to do this through working to make Saanich a leader in the fight against climate change and reducing waste. And secondly, I'd like to address our affordable housing crisis. I work to do this by working to allow detached secondary suites and examining our tiny house communities. As councillor, I'll listen to your ideas and concerns first, then bring them to council. I'll answer your calls and I'll respond to your emails within 24 hours. With that said, thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to discussing the issues tonight.
Here tonight. I'm Rebecca Mersrow, and I'm running to bring a more forward-thinking and balanced perspective to council, and a more inclusive approach that considers the interests of everyone, not only those who are fortunate enough to be able to show up at meetings. After my narrow loss in the 2014 general election, I enrolled in UVic's Masters of Public Administration program to better equip myself for the responsibilities of a councillor. I also work with municipalities every day in the capacity of a consultant, advising them on the management of their water services. I've amassed a lot of governance experience through lots of voluntary roles on boards. Having perspective and being able to distinguish the strategic from the administrative and the big picture from the inconsequential is really critical to do things efficiently and to seize opportunities as they arise. Thank you for considering my perspectives.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Henderson. I'm self-employed in the financial sector. After paying off my mortgage a number of years ago, I reduced my workload and increased my community involvement. Since then, working with others, I brought Repair Cafe to Saanich. It's not only a fun place to meet for coffee and get things fixed for free, it also adds a critical element of repair to reduce, reuse, and recycle, and it's fun. As co-founder of the Saanich Sunday Farmers Market, I've helped over 70 small businesses earn income over the last summer. I currently serve as president of the Royal Oak Community Association, and I work with community members and developers to build housing that's welcomed. With the Saanich Community Association Network, I work to improve communication between community associations. I'm known in my community as someone who gets things done. Thank you.
So thank you all for making my job very easy. I really appreciate it, and that's so very respectful to our audience for giving their time to listen to you tonight. If you could please, and then audience, would you please hold your applause, and then we'll give everyone a rousing round of applause at the end of each of the set of responses that we have. Thank you. So the first question, and I'll read it twice, and then we'll start with our caller, who will be the first person to answer this question. The first question is, how do you view the role of community associations in Saanich? How do you view the role of community associations in Saanich? Art Pollard.
Madam Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, my 6 years in the Community Association, the Quad City Community Association, taught me about being with the people, listening to their concerns, and passing them on forward to council. There is nothing more direct than a community association, their relationship with council. They're the eyes and ears of the neighborhood because they listen and they hear and then they bring things forward. They act as a pre-screening tool for council as well. So if there's a major issue, they hold public hearings where people can get out and have their say. If they don't like the development or they want to see it go forward. If they want the developer to provide more amenities to their neighborhood, and all those different issues that arise. My 6 years experience in the Quad City Community Association taught me greatly about that. And I think there's a definite role for more vigorous community associations. We have 14, we could have more, and the ones that are weak right now could be strengthened greatly.
Well, of course, community associations play an extremely important role in Saanich. There are eyes and ears, as I said by Art, in terms of the community, but it's also where individuals can get involved in their neighborhoods and also provide timely information, like what's the status of our sports and recreation facilities, where is a critical need for sidewalks, and feedback on official community plans and development proposals. But one thing I want to caution against is that there's really set in an attitude of NIMBYism in some community associations. And I'm not just singling out Saanich, I'm saying throughout British Columbia. And what we have to realize is, if we say no to development, we're saying yes to sprawl. If we say no to development, we're saying yes to sky-high property, sky-high rentals, and a community that, quite frankly, most of us will not be able to afford to live in.
How do I view community associations? I'm currently the treasurer of the Camosun Community Association, and I've learned an awful lot from being in that role. Community associations, as has been previously stated, work with residents around a variety of issues that arise. And in the case of the Camosun Community Association, we dealt with the Townley Lodge situation, which is a local area planning. Some might describe that as NIMBYism, but in fact we were able to work through that issue, and we've had a successful relationship with the Greater Victoria Housing Society, and they're going to be bringing a new proposal to Saanich which will meet all of their needs as well as the needs of the community. So the local community association has the ability to massage that relationship between residents and council, and of course is an important mechanism for council to learn, in fact, what is going on in each of those communities. And I think that we do have a role on council to find ways, in fact, to make community associations even more effective and meaningful. Thank you.
How do I view trouble with this thing tonight? Try this again. How do I view the role of community associations? They are, as stated before, part of our Saanich. They're the eyes and ears of all the residents. They are the voice that that comes to us, to council members, to understand the issues that are out there. As a project manager, I have actually dealt with community associations in the past. We have to address the concerns and issues that community associations bring forward. It's an important part of the community, the Saanich, having them involved.
Well, it's really important to have boots on the ground, and that's really what local, the community associations are. I'm the vice president of the Quadra Cedar Hill Community Association. I'm also the treasurer of the Saanich Community Association Network. And one thing I've learned over the past 3.5 years being a member of the Quadra Cedar Hill Community Association is that you can't Google the type of information and history and experience that folks have in those community associations. So it's really important to engage them because some of them have lived here all their lives and know the history of Saanich. So as part of our association, we reach out to the community, try to feedback what we hear to Saanich, so Saanich Council and Mayor can make an objective, pragmatic decision about our neighborhoods.
Hi there. In 2006, I co-founded the Blenkinsop Valley Community Association, was vice president for 2 years and then a director for 3 years and currently director again. However, sometimes community associations can become populated with with interest that is not necessarily in the public interest. And therefore, I have really enjoyed my 4 or 5 months of door knocking here in Saanich, where I have had the opportunity to meet Saanich residents on the doorstep to find out what is most important to them. And I thank them very much for sharing their stories. The housing crisis is abominable, and I will be standing for those voices on council. Thank you.
I think our community associations have a huge role in Saanich's local politics. They provide a voice for their communities and additionally hold council to account to make sure that council is properly representing their communities and their residents. One of the key ways I built my platform was actually emailing all the community associations and asking to talk to them on the phone, so I could ask first off what issues are important to them, and then bring forward my ideas to them and see if they felt that would be a positive step forward for our community. So they were there for me when I wanted to reach out to them, and they're there for their residents, so they have a huge role in Saanich.
In a municipality as large and diverse as Saanich, I think community associations are critical to represent our very diverse neighborhoods and ensure their interests are carried forward. However, I've met with a lot of community associations in recent years, and they've acknowledged difficulties attracting new members given our changing communities, and they also have widely varying approaches to their roles, which in my mind amounts to them having a bit of a legitimacy deficit currently. And despite that, they're still afforded a fair amount of influence and time, if you will, and council's consideration. My 2 practical recommendations would be to develop a terms of reference that clarifies the roles of community associations and responsibilities. I think they should facilitate exchange with the development community rather than advocate. And I also think that Saanich should bring more resources to the forefront to help them with succession planning and orientation. Thank you.
This is one of my favorite topics. As president of a local community association, I know that the community association is intended to play an integral role in the process at Saanich. But there are challenges. At the Saanich Community Association Network, where I'm chair, we recognized these challenges some time ago. And we're working to draft a series of recommendations, which have so far been well accepted by members that are stakeholders in the process. We are looking at standardizing the role somewhat of community associations through a community association review. This means that when a developer comes to an association, they'll know what to expect all the way across Saanich. It means that community members will have a greater impact on the information that goes to Saanich. It's been a very well-received process, and it's encouraging to know that the need is seen. Thanks.
I've been involved in the Gorge Social Community Association since 1998. We're the guys who got the Gorge Canada Day picnic going. We did not ask permission to put on the Gorge Canada Day picnic. We just went ahead and planned it. And then did the things we had to do to get it on, in terms of closing the road and so on and so forth. What I think community associations have to understand is you are in charge of your own destiny. You have to take control of what you want to do. If you want to be involved in land development issues, find out what that means. Get involved with land development from the point of view of doing the research. Talk to people who know what they're doing in that game. They're not necessarily staff people. But teach yourself. We have to educate ourselves. We also have to remember that we're neutral. We don't divide the community. What we do is we support what decisions the community wants to make. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's give a round of applause. I'm conscious that it's very warm in here, so every couple of questions I will invite you to stand up and wiggle your toes if you need to. So we'll do one more question, and then as I read the third question, please feel free to move around slightly in place. Question number 2. At last night's Saanich Committee of the Whole meeting, Council endorsed option 1 to update local area plans over the next 7 years. If you were a councillor, how would you prioritize local area planning? At last night's Saanich Committee of the Whole meeting, Council endorsed option 1 to update local area plans over the next 7 years. If you were a councillor, how would you prioritize local area planning? Michael Bacon.
Thank you. Well, in terms of local area planning, one of the things that I'd be prioritizing is where we can get nodes of high density development so that we can get higher density residential construction. You may not know this, but municipalities generally lose money in terms of providing services to single-family detached homes, whereas with higher residential, higher density residential construction, municipalities are able to more efficiently deliver services, and as such, it grows the revenue stream. So whether it's around Uptown or whether it's the Shelburne Valley, or Shelburne Corridor, I'd be definitely looking at areas where we can look to get some density, and also, quite frankly, provide some housing, both for purchase and for rental reasons. I think it's extremely important that we grow the inventory, and I think it's extremely important that we ensure that that inventory is not just for high-end people moving into our community, but for a range of incomes, including working class and middle class people.
Yes, well, I was sitting, as several of us were sitting there last night through this discussion at Saanich Council, and I guess the first thing I would say about it is I don't consider 7 years to be an expedited process. So the issue is how can we get the number of years down, and I believe that many of the people who spoke actually provided ideas on how it could be a much shorter process. For one thing, the local area plans are in place, and we could leverage that process by we're not having to recreate the wheel from beginning to end. We could, in fact, use community associations more effectively because they have been very instrumental in many of the issues that have come forward about the local area plans to try and expedite this process as well. Having said that, the first two that they picked off the block were Cordova Bay and Caddo Bay. Those probably are the right ones, given the nature of the development that certainly was being proposed in Cordova Bay. But I think we could shorten the time frame considerably, and I would work towards doing that if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Updating local area plans, important part of our community. Meeting with stakeholders, understanding the issues, prioritizing which plans need to be done from those assessments, I believe are something that I would be looking at. As project manager, that's what I do. I try to understand stakeholders' issues, and by that I would be working with the community associations, working on those local area plans, figuring out which ones need to be addressed a little stronger than others, and getting it done, moving forward.
that meeting last night too. It was a bit of a marathon. I don't know how late it went to, but 12:30, there you go. So I left at 11:30. But I want to applaud council for, grabbing option one. And, unfortunately, if we did it any faster, they were talking about $500,000 a year extra, which is an increase in taxes. And I guess we can't want our cake and eat it too. So I applaud them for picking option one, and I understand why they did so. The first thing is we need to identify which areas of Saanich are appropriate for density. We need more housing to make Saanich more affordable and for those places to rent and buy. And so the density, identifying those areas, I think is crucial. So that would be the first area as we move forward here with the planning process.
Hi there. Local area planning should be systematic and methodical. We should be creating a system into which to prioritize these associations and areas. And it should be based on need and case, roads, safety, all those things. And that form would determine that.
Well, I was also at the council meeting committee of the whole meeting last night. In terms of local area plans, I definitely support the current ones. I do think there could be some updating done. And last night there were a lot of people coming forward in the opportunity for public input who are angry because of how long this time frame is. I mean, people were saying that, look, we've been asking for this already for years, and now you're telling us they're going to be updated in 7 years. So I think they could be updated. They could be updated a lot sooner. But in general, I do support the current local area plans. Thanks.
I think it's regrettable that we find ourselves in this situation, frankly, with out-of-date local area plans, that this has a tendency of putting all of our neighborhoods very much on the defensive and pitting community members against each other and also against members of the development community. I think, all parties involved in this would certainly benefit from more certainty and assurance that comes with a clear vision for what we want each of our neighborhoods to look like going forward. In terms of how we get there and prioritize our resource allocation, it has to be fair, it has to be systematic. The way to do that, in my mind, is to think about the date at which the local area plans were last created. Look at the development interest in those areas of interest. How has that compared with others in past years? And also, we need to focus on our centers and our villages where we want to be putting more of our population going forward.
I also sat through that marathon meeting last night. Originally, staff had come with a 13-year plan for updating local area plans. They were sent back and came forward with a 7-year plan. So it was a big improvement from that perspective. However, it's not writing new local area plans, it's updating them. For the most part, these are intended to be very long-term documents. But it does require a check-in periodically to see how a community is growing and if there are any changes to be made. That has not been done. And that is one area where we could be proactive in instituting a policy of regular check-ins with our local area plan. And through community associations, open houses, gathering information in other ways, to keep our plans a little bit more current and to not have to go through this process.
Local area plans are absolutely key to every community. However, the way Saanich has gone about trying to figure out how to update them has been very bureaucratic. They're going by the rules, they're going by what they're allowed to do or what they think they're allowed to do. Council could have led the way here with a little bit of creativity, which I didn't see through this whole process. It's very disappointing to me, because if they would just simply say, let's do it differently, let's go out and say, we're going to assign a staff person to a community. That staff person attends all the meetings with that community. So the connection between staff and Saanich and council starts to become a real living thing. And then the local area plan, which is a living document, can be tweaked and adjusted as it goes along according to how Saanich itself is changing. The OCP is a key document which feeds into our local area plans, and that connection is not clearly made.
Ladies and gentlemen, planning is a stepchild of conflict. There's rural and agricultural conflict, there's developer conflict with non-developers. People who want it to stay the same versus people who want progressive change. When I think of local area plans, I want to see a review on an annual basis. I don't want to see a 7-year window. I want to see things happen and happen quickly. We've got a lot of problems out there, particularly in housing and affordability. And if we keep waiting for 7 years, what's going to happen to our young people here in Victoria? They're going to leave. We're going to have a brain drain, and the prices are still going to climb because of outside investment. We need local area plans, but we need to look at them, and we need to keep them current.
Okay, folks, it's time for, if you have any cards, please hold them up. Find everybody standing now. Caleb and his group will be around to pick these up. So
These are your questions. If you want to pose a question to the candidates, please hold your piece of paper up and they will be collected from you.
Okay.
There are also some additional seats available. Excuse me. There's also some additional seats at the front available for folks who are standing. And if, I appreciate it's very warm, but if you do have half a foot between you, would you please move 3 inches over along your pew so that you can perhaps make room for one more person in your pew. Thank you. Okay, sitting down again. There are 3 seats at the front if anyone wants to sit down. And another one up here, 4 seats. Okay, I'm going to go ahead with question 3. And feel free to keep finding seats. There's 3 right in front of you. You might want not all to be this close, Lee, but in any case, there's 3 there. So question number 3, housing is becoming a more and more critical issue in our communities. What actions would you take to address housing needs? Housing is becoming a more and more critical issue in our communities. What actions would you take to address housing needs? Karen Harper.
Thank you. Well, aside from getting those local area plans updated in order to create certainty for both residents and developers so that we know what the future is going to look like, we need to start using some of the tools available to us if we're looking to create greater density. The fact is that one of the main reason that housing is so affordable is the cost of land. So the only way you're going to get housing costs down is doing something or other with density, whether you have garden suites, whether you have condominiums, whatever. But if you want to include in that mix having affordable housing, there is this thing called a community amenity contribution that is available. And it can be part of the zoning process. And as a part of that process, developers have to provide affordable housing in exchange for certain things that they're permitted to do, which the community would have already pre-agreed to. So I think we need to start looking much more creatively at how we create the situation to get affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. What can we learn from other communities? There's talk of invisible density, hidden density, gentle density. All of those, the secondary suites, the laneway houses, the accessory buildings, the multiple units. We need to streamline process, create efficiency with approval processes. We need to improve the ability for homeowners and developers to invest in Saanich. We need to encourage a broad range of market housing choices, which satisfies varying family and income situations. Having a forum with developers, construction associations, community associations, see what we can develop, foster partnerships. We cannot do it alone. It's important that we pilot projects and be respectful to neighbors and neighborhoods.
I think it's really important to, again, update those local area plans as fast as possible, as they are planning to do, to identify the areas that we, or that are appropriate for density. Most of my friends have moved out to the West Shore, to Shawnigan Lake, to Stoop, because they can't afford to live here and buy a place for themselves, and a lot of them aren't even being able to afford rent in Saanich. So it's increasing the density in the appropriate areas, but as well, it's working with the government, the provincial government, other levels of government to create affordable housing for those in need, those on low income level, those UVic students that are now creating rooming houses in Gordon Head, and we need to address that issue as well, because it's important to create areas in Saanich that if you look at UVic, there's not a lot of places to live, so you're going to end up with rooming houses unless we're proactive and start taking a more active approach, building these places to live. Okay.
Affordable housing is something that I feel extraordinarily, very, very strongly about. I've been door knocking all over Saanich for the last 5 months. I've met residents living in their cars. I've met residents living in parks. And yet I've seen all these vacant houses all over Saanich, and I just find the disparity just not all right. So we need to really have some tax reform here, and owner-occupied houses, they should be taxed the least, but vacant owners should be taxed the most. And there's a lot of working models around for us to gain some inspiration on it, but we definitely need to use tax reform and co-op housing.
Well, as I mentioned in my introduction, affordable housing is extremely important to me. I was very pleased last night, Committee of the Whole, to see Council move forward with the study looking into garden suites. That's part of my platform. I was a little disappointed, however, to see the time frame for the study to be a year long. I think the housing crisis is quite urgent, and we need to address it as soon as possible, and garden suites are a perfect way to do that. I was also disappointed to see that this study would not expand to rural Saanich. I think that we could at least consider allowing the secondary suites in rural Saanich. There's a housing crisis in all over Saanich, so we need to at least consider our rural area. And I'd also like to look into tiny house communities. I mean, even if some of us may think I would want to live in a tiny house, some people do, and right now they can't, and they're an extremely affordable and livable option, so we need to be looking at that and other unique opportunities to address affordable housing. Thank you very much.
To address our housing needs, we really need to increase supply in the right places where people don't have to rely on their personal vehicles to get around, because as we all know, traffic congestion is already a huge issue in our region. To do that, we really need to need to have a clearer signal to the development community about what it is we're looking for. And in turn, we should incentivize the things that we'd really like to see them doing, like creating some below market housing opportunities and putting density in the right areas. So talking to them openly about community amenities. We also need to improve the efficiency of our business processes. The development community is steering clear of Saanich right now. We've missed a huge wave of reinvestment in the region because we're perceived as very inefficient. We need a service delivery review to improve our processes and be more welcoming to the development community.
I worked for the last 2 years to help streamline the process at Saanich, and we are making progress. Working with developers to understand their issues, working with other community associations, as I've said before, to help standardize the process and increase the amount of community input, because not everybody is a community association member, yet their voice and their opinions are still needed to be heard. There are a number of initiatives that Saanich can undertake. Carriage houses, that was discussed last night, are a very small part of the solution. They're expensive to build. They have to be built to code. There is likely to be very little uptake, but there are many more innovative strategies that we can use, and that is where we have to start. talking to people and developing a proper housing strategy in Saanich.
In 2006, we went through a process in our neighborhood to look at how we do something with the corridors, dense corridors, Tilton Road, Burnside Road, and Gorge Road. And with the help of Smart Growth BC, we actually held a weekend charrette with Patrick Condon, who's a professor of Smart Growth, and understood that we needed to build density along those corridors. We figured out, okay, let's mark that into our whole area plan, which we did. And out of that, we got 6-story building at the corner of Burnside, and we got the first rental units in Saanich, purpose-built in 25 years. That took effort. We're open to more business. Come on, talk to us. We're happy to do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a demand problem and a supply problem. There's not enough supply of housing in Saanich, and I have a partial solution. How many people know how many vacant houses there are in Saanich? Does anybody know? Well, I'll tell you, there are over 1,400 vacant houses in Saanich. They did an inventory. Why don't we tax these vacant houses? Why are they sitting there waiting to play the white swan, the developers, to come in and go before council, get their development approved? In the meantime, these dilapidated houses keep ruining your neighborhood. Think about it. And I'll use a good example, and I'll be brief. Right behind my house on Linden, there's a gentleman who is developing 6 houses, but he's left that house, a perfectly good 5-bedroom house, vacant. Is there a problem there? Yeah, there certainly is. Thank you.
I'm delighted to have this question because, as I'm sure many of you know, housing is the #1 issue. It's the reason why I'm running in this by-election. Earlier this year, I went to find a 1-bedroom accommodation for my son, $1,200 a month. I remember when you could rent an entire house for that amount. It's ridiculous, and you sure as hell can't live on that when live in an apartment like that when you're making only minimum wage. So we have a real crisis. I have 6 years experience in terms of working with the development community out in Langford to get higher density construction and to ensure that we had units that were affordable housing units, low income units, and the like. I have an excellent relationship with both the federal and provincial government. I make my living as a lobbyist. I need to have an excellent relationship with the government and, quite frankly, the opposition parties. I can leverage dollars to get more in the way of low-income and co-op housing. If housing is a concern to you, I am clearly the best candidate to deliver.
Saanich is the largest municipality in Greater Victoria and the largest member municipality of the Capital Regional District. Do you believe that Greater Victoria's regional governance structure is effective or in need of restructuring? It's okay, they only have 60 seconds. I'll read it again. Saanich is the largest municipality in Greater Victoria and the largest member municipality of the Capital Regional District. Do you believe that Greater Victoria's regional governance structure is effective or in need of restructuring? Keith Davidoff.
Well, I think there's a simple answer to that, and I believe the answer is yes. We do need a restructuring. How that gets done, I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I need to get answers on that and work for you guys to come up with an answer. I'm not going to go over here. I'm not understanding the issue on that one is effective. I need to get into it a little bit more and understand it better. Okay.
Do I dare say the A word right now? That's the elephant in the room right now. So I think it's, the first things first, we need to push our provincial government to actually do the study that both the NDP and the Liberals promised us, and that's a study to understand how the regional municipalities are working together. There was recently just an integrated services study done. I'm working my way through it, and it depends on who you talk to. We're doing okay. Some people say we're a flop and we could do a better job. So I think my position would be I would lobby the provincial government to get us a study to understand exactly where we stand, how we're working together, and do I think we can do a better job? Absolutely.
Hi, okay. I'm not really going to talk about amalgamation here because I think there's other bigger priorities here in Saanich, but do I have a problem with governance? Oh yes, I certainly do. I believe the complaint-driven bylaw system is a recipe for financial mismanagement. For example, we could have somebody calling about cat poo in their garden, and we can have somebody calling about, dumping toxins into the Colwoods Creek, but bylaw is checking on the cat poo. So guess what? Exactly. So I would like to see our governance model replaced with an incentives model, where we are giving owners that are making a difference, they're holding large portions of biodiversity on their property, we are giving them acknowledgement, gratitude, and tax incentives and restoration assistance, financial.
So I will dare to say the A word, amalgamation. I think Greater Victoria needs it. We do have a lot of municipalities. It's quite a weird system that we have. As mentioned, Saanich is the biggest municipality in the CRD, and it does concern me whether or not Saanich needs it. One of my biggest concerns in this is amalgamating Saanich Police with other forces. I think they do an exceptional job on their own, and I don't want to see them join forces. But with all that said, there are many other concerns and considerations that we have to take a look at, and I think an unbiased, provincially funded study is exactly what we need to decide if we need amalgamation, and if so, how we should amalgamate. Thank you very much.
Regional governments in BC are very much limited by the tools in their enabling legislation. They really are more like service delivery agents, and they really lack the authority to compel their member municipalities to cooperate. This model works well for some uncontroversial services, such as water, but not so well for some of our bigger challenges, and the prime one for me is transportation planning. I remain open to amalgamation. However, our provincial government has signaled they're not particularly interested in exploring that, so I think it's unlikely we'll do that in the near future. What I would like to see in the very near term is consideration of a regional transportation authority that actually can compel municipalities to cooperate on their transportation planning and can levy the finances needed to improve our dire traffic congestion situation.
This is like that strange question that was asked on the 2014 ballot in Saanich. Governance structures don't make decisions. People make decisions. So rather than changing out the governance structure as a means to get decisions made, you could look at changing the people that are making those decisions. That's a first start. In the same way as the sewage blockage, for lack of a better word, was addressed with a top-down decision to institute a board, we can do the same thing with the transportation issue. Transportation, housing, and sewage are probably the three biggest issues in our region. And sometimes cooperation just doesn't work. It has to be done.
Governance in the CRD is not working. Simple as that, we all know it. We don't have a transportation authority. We've been asking for one for at least 10 to 15 years. It is time to rethink regional governance structure. And the biggest issue for me is the fact that we have people with two hats sitting at the table. It's time to directly elect Metro Victoria Board. That board can sit down and take care of these regional issues in consultation with the individual municipalities as appropriate. But will have the teeth and the authority to make the decisions without going on for years and years and years without coming to any kind of conclusion because Langford wants something else and then Scotland needs something else. It's time for us to consider a conversation, not about Gaylord, about Metro Victoria, something different.
Ladies and gentlemen, bigger is not always better, and that's what I have to think about amalgamation. If you look at the restructuring that the people keep talking about, the amalgamation group, they keep saying, well, we're going to make this one big monolithic structure here in Victoria, and it's going to make it better. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to lose contact with your government. Each of the municipalities have special needs, special concerns, and then they get together through the CRD and they try to make those things come together. I agree with Rob, yes, we should have a Greater Victoria Transit Authority to get that transportation going. But amalgamation, no. It's been put down by the NDP government, it's been put down by the Liberal government. We need to work within the confines of our current structures and make them better. Regional support, 200 different shared agreements are fine. Let's make them better through good communication.
Well, if you go to my platform at mypercentagecouncil.ca, you'll see that I am very much in favor of giving all voting age residents within the CRD a vote on whether or not they want to see some form of amalgamation. And then we should proceed on that basis. It should not be impossible for us to have a CRD-wide vote. And if we had any leadership out of the CRD, that would happen. So instead of just talking about it, we'd actually gauge what the amount of support that's out there amongst the public. Clearly, the CRD in its current form is dysfunctional. They've got, they're going off to Europe to study sewer systems while they've already blown $100 million on missteps in terms of our. And how's that out of order? In any event, it's a situation where I think we need to see some serious reform. I think we need to change up some of the personnel as well. And let's bring some greater accountability in terms of Saanich and in terms of CRD. And yes, 13 different municipalities for less than the population of Burnaby is ridiculous.
In the interest of full disclosure, I am a director on leave from amalgamation, yes, so clearly I have a bias. But the bias of amalgamation is to have a proper study so that we can all have enough information to make an informed decision. My personal bias is yes, 13 is way too many and it probably should be 3 or 4. The biggest selling point to that is that if you got down to one, you wouldn't need the CRD, which is something that many of us are very unhappy with. The CRD was created 50 years ago. It has never had a proper review. It is unelected, unaccountable, and the structure that was created 50 years ago is not meant to be doing what it is doing today, which is why we are having so many problems. It's dealing with issues, but it has no authority to deal with the issues. It has to come back to the municipalities to get permission. We're currently in mediation over the regional growth strategy. That's going to cost all of us $500,000 just to mediate because we can't all go on together. So we could create a lot more efficiency, and we certainly should at least have the information to consider. Thank you.
Please stand if you need to. Just a point of order. It's funny how you all start talking when you stand. Is that something that happens in your houses? Do you talk when you stand, or it's something about the way in which you get along socially? I actually sit when I talk usually. I just wanted to clarify a point of order. Certainly, activities of local governments and general policies are fine to critique or call into question. Individuals or actions of individuals are not. So I don't find that the point that was taken about the CRD is out of line. I'll read question 5 then. If elected to Saanich Council, one of your first tasks in October will likely be to consider recommendations from the Diamond Head Report on the environmental development permit areas. How do you plan on moving forward in addressing the EDPA recommendations? If elected to Saanich Council, one of your first tasks in October will likely be to consider recommendations from the Diamond Head Report on the environmental development permit areas. How do you plan on moving forward in addressing the EDPA recommendations? Sean Newby.
What's wrong? There's two elephants in the room tonight, but this has been a hard one for me. I've tried to understand it on many levels, from an environmental level, from a property right level, from a home building level. And so I think it's important to move forward and understand and address the recommendations in the Diamond Head Report, but I also think the conversation needs to go further. And I think we need to understand the EDPA better, and I think we also need to understand how properties are being affected. Right now, the EDPA, if your property's involved, it doesn't come under your assessment, and so we need to understand better. We need to use the recommendations, but we also need to expand the conversation, because it doesn't just end with these recommendations. We need to understand the property rights that are currently at jeopardy.
Hi there. I wrote something to the Saanich News called Fixing the EDPA. I believe that although the EDPA was not rolled out as well as it could have been, it is a visionary piece of legislation and something that Vic Derman, whose job here we are standing to replace, really cared about. My position on the EDPA is we need to have an exemplar situation where we acknowledge Saanich residents that are making a difference by hosting biodiversity on their properties and giving them tax incentives and access to ecological restoration. We are really underciting our opportunities here. We are a university town. We have the Department of Environmental Studies and the restoration of natural systems at UVic, and everyone is desperate for real projects. So I would like to see that, and it's called the Saanich Legacy Project. Look it up in Saanich News.
In my view, the EDPA has its purpose, but it also has its issues. It has some serious issues. First off, we're using outdated aerial maps from the 1980s, which I think is ridiculous, but more important, or even worse, in my view, is that the implementation of the EDPA was done without adequate consultation. One of my key platform sections, people-centered decision-making, focuses on a little bit more consultation in areas like this and better consultation. I think Saanich does some consultation well, but it fails in other areas. The EDPA is a perfect example of that. So as councillor, I would fight for serious consultation on finding a middle ground of creating an EDPA that works. Thank you.
Well said. This also is the most difficult issue for me personally. I have a close history with karaoke ecosystems as a former executive director of GERT. And, that brings a certain bias, but I'm also a very pragmatic person. And I have to say, I think it was incredibly irresponsible of the current council to preempt the report that they commissioned to review the EDPA bylaw by deciding to temporarily suspend single-family residences from the EDPA. That will effectively make it very difficult for any future councillors or councils to undo, given how much of a hit Saanich's credibility has taken. I think we need to, in a sense, consider the recommendations of the report, but also consider whether there are more cost-effective and cooperative means to achieve the same outcomes, such as incentives, and we need to focus on our parks.
The EDPA has become a very divisive issue, damaging long-term relationships among people who all have a deep concern for their environment. I have yet to meet one person who says, yes, we should mow down all our natural areas and build more stuff. I've never met that person. I don't believe they really exist here in Saanich. We have an opportunity to continue the conversation with these recommendations that Diamond Head has brought in. They've been fairly neutral in the process. They've sought to talk to as many people as they can. This should be considered the start of the conversation and not the end of something. Let's move forward, continue working to refine something that will work, because the EDPA itself is not unusual.
Ever since I can remember, I've been brought up to think of the environment as something that I need to protect. It's my job as a human being to not step on it too hard. However, when I heard the EDPA conference coming up, I realized that the real impasse is the sides everybody takes. You have people on one side saying it's got to be this way and they're entrenched. You have people on the other side that it's going to hurt me and they're entrenched. Where's the person that's in between that says, let's sit down and figure out a solution, as opposed to fighting each other constantly? The Diamond report actually gives us some things to start with. Those conversations need to be independent of the players that have caused the conflict so far. So perhaps the first thing I could do at Sandwich Council would be to recommend that we create a body that's independent of the council staff and the property owners to sit down and help resolve some of the issues.
A complicated piece of legislation here. I bet half the audience doesn't even know what the EPA really is. Basically, it's a way of protecting land and sandwich. It's affected very few people, but those few people are very angry about it because they don't feel they've been consulted. They haven't been listened to. They haven't been heard. If I was on council, I'd listen to what you want. But at the same time, the Diamond Head report is very, very important. And also the Rollo report. And it tells about the net effect of the bylaw on those properties, and that's 0. If you're aggrieved by it, yeah, it hurts to be in that EDPA. But there are variances. There are ways to get around that. And I think one of the things I would say as a potential councillor is we've got to be flexible. Maybe consult a bit more, maybe go with what we've got. This is a geoprint. It's a blueprint for the future of Sandwich. Pay attention and learn about it.
Well, as I make clear on my platform, if I'm elected on September 23rd, I will vote to rescind the EDPA. I believe it was extremely flawed in the way it was implemented, the lack of consultation, and the usual sad shenanigans where some people were treated a certain way and other people were treated another way. There's been a lack of transparency, and there's a lack of fairness and a lack of equanimity in terms of the way it's been applied. I think it's such a poor job. The aerial photographs that were referenced earlier, I've got 3 photos on my campaign website. One is of a parking lot, the other is of a traffic island, and the third is of a cluster of a group of Gary Oaks. Guess which picture is not in the EDPA? That's right, the cluster of Gary Oaks, but the parking lot and the traffic island are. It's a mess. It needs to be rescinded. We have federal and provincial environmental legislation. We have a tree bylaw. I'm a former CEO of a wave energy company. I obviously care about the environment for our children and grandchildren, but this is a mess. It needs to go.
I've attended every meeting but one on this issue since it started. I've listened to the residents, and I have to say that I would vote to rescind, and that is based on the Diamond Head report. The recommendations in the Diamond Head report say to eliminate the map because it's not doing what it's meant to do, and it's not in fact identifying sensitive areas. It says to eliminate the buffers, it says to include Sandwich in it, and it says to create a stewardship program. But more importantly, it's important to understand what the Diamond Head report didn't get to do. They were not permitted to consider rescinding. Their terms of reference did not permit them to consider that. And when you look at the recommendations in the entire report, it comes this close to saying rescind it when they couldn't do it. So I would vote to rescind, and I would then want to rebuild using the recommendations from the Diamond Head report and emphasize a stewardship program that would be consistent with the terms of the official community plan. Thank you.
Simple approach, involve the people, stakeholders. We need to better reflect the environment, protection of the environment, and the rights of the property owners. Thank you.
This is
final set question, and then we will have 2 rounds of questions from the audience. So I'll read out the final question, but what we'll then do for the final 2 questions is I'll read 2 questions, and each candidate chooses one of those questions to answer, and then we'll go through that again. So then in that way, we're responding to 4 questions from the audience, well actually 6 because I've amalgamated some. Others that were put forward is either not within the jurisdiction of the municipality, or they've somewhat been covered already tonight, or you'll be angry with me, so choose one of those options. But all of these questions will go to the Thursday all candidates meeting as well, so if 2 options, either attend again, which would make you really hardcore, and you should be running for Saanich, or please feel free to ask the question of the candidates afterwards. So the final set question, how will you work with others on council, and do you hope to achieve consensus in decision making? How will you work with others on council, and do you hope to achieve consensus in decision making? Natalie Chambers.
Actually, I kind of believe in compliance. My focus is on the environment and the urban containment boundary, and we are having a whole bunch of things going on where we are seeing ecosystems being damaged. And if you read my platform, I'm very much against Saanich taxpayers and residents subsidizing non-permitted and industrial damage to our ecosystem. So I believe that we need to find those users. So I know in that case, I think compliance needs to be changed to enforcement, because sometimes people just don't comply. Thank you.
Well, collaboration is often something that you don't see in politics, which does sadden me, but at the same time, you don't always want a perfect consensus on everything. You know, we need differing views. I mean, that's what democracy is. But the key thing is that we need to be disagreeing respectfully. And even if we do disagree on certain key issues, we still need to be able to work together and collaborate with each other. That is what a proper democracy is. And that's what I would work to bring forward as councillor.
I actually have a very positive rapport with all existing members of council and the mayor, and have had an opportunity to meet with each and every one of them over the course of this campaign. I also very explicitly earlier in my campaign issued a statement to indicate that I would not be seeking endorsements from any existing members of council, because in my view that was getting off on the wrong foot by choosing favorites and not communicating to all that I would like to have a good working relationship with them all. I recognize change doesn't happen overnight, particularly for one member of council going in following the by-election. But I have a very balanced, reasoned approach. I do my research, I do my homework, and I like to try to use that evidence-based information to bring others on side. And so I welcome the challenge of trying to make our council more constructive and more collaborative.
I also have a very positive relationship with each member of council. I've been appearing before council since 2015 in my roles in the volunteer community. I work with others all the time. On an issue, I'll do my research, and then I'll ask questions and listen. You can learn a lot more by the people that disagree with you than by the people that agree with you. So that's one of the main places I start. I look for the people that disagree. Consensus means general agreement. It doesn't always mean you're unanimous. Sometimes you just have to go with the majority. If you disagree, you let it go and you move on to the next thing.
My history includes being president of the Chamber of Commerce, being president of Right to Work Victoria, being the chair of the BC Chamber of Commerce, being president of the Gorge Telecom Community Association. All that means building relationships and partnerships. It also means as chair, you don't decide. You encourage everybody else to decide. So part of my role as a counselor would be to help facilitate those decisions. As an expert witness in the British Columbia City Supreme Court, I'm not allowed to decide what the court's going to do, but I give them evidence and information to help them to make those decisions. It's important to work towards finding solutions as opposed to dealing with personality differences or you're different than me and therefore I'm going to sit down and take my marbles home.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no I in team. I've worked with various councillors over the years. When I served 10 years on the Cedar Hill Golf Committee, when I served on the mayor, special events, and civic events committees, I got a chance to work with some great individuals, councillors. And my current relationship with the existing councillors is very good. I too did not seek endorsements from any sitting councillor or mayor. And better than that, I didn't seek funding from any councillor or mayor, because I believe they should be neutral in this election. This is the people's choice. They don't need big money. They need accountability, and they need teamwork. I'm a consensus builder. I've always been a consensus builder, because I believe there is no I in the team.
Well, since entering this election race, I've had a couple of councillors meet with me, Susan Bryce and Leith Wergeland. I've had positive communications with other councillors, including Fred Haynes and Colin Plant. Given that I helped him get elected 4 years ago, I gotta imagine I'm gonna have a good relationship with the current mayor. So I'm very confident of having a working majority should I be elected on September 23rd. I think with my election, we'll have a clear majority and a clear direction to Saanich in terms of let's move forward in terms of this housing crisis, and let's have a Saanich that lives within the means of its taxpayers, and let's have some fairness and accountability, and let's stop seeing a situation where a favored few get the green light and everyone else faces innumerable hurdles and barriers.
My background initially as a teacher, and when I finally retired as a senior vice president of the Pension Corporation, required me to use skills in consensus building. You don't make significant cultural changes in a large corporate organization unless you can reach out and connect with a lot of different people and make it work. So I believe in an approach that's respectful. You reach out to people, you find out what is the issue that is actually engaging them, and you try to find those areas where you share a commonality, and that's what you build from. And it's not always going to be possible, but it is always going to be possible to be respectful and to build on those relationships so that the next time around you can make even more progress.
I may not be comfortable in front of all you guys standing here and talking, but I'll tell you this much. In my profession, I need to build teams. Providing leadership is a big part of what I do in my job. I've been part of Gordon Baseball for 20 years, 8 years as president. Every board meeting was full. We had challenges, but we collaborated and we got things done. Communication is key. And working with a group of individuals, that communication and that strong building of camaraderie is important. Thank you.
Well, I too have a very good relationship with Saanich Council and Saanich staff. Marcia Henderson and I started the Saanich Sunday Farmers Market, and we needed to work with all of the Saanich council members and mayor and staff to bring that to reality. So I built those relationships, and I know that they are very important in order to create policy that will benefit us all. Right now on Saanich Council, occasionally people can be debating personalities rather than policy. So I think it's really important to work with one another, regardless whether you agree, and come to a consensus as much as you can. That's not always possible, but again, I'd rather people debate my policy rather than personality.
If you'd like to stand, or if you need to stand, I'll leave the last. That's your last opportunity before the end. so we will hold it there. Okay, so we get to the audience question portion of the evening. The structure is that I will ask 2 questions, and each candidate will choose 1 question to answer. So you have 2 opportunities to do that. So 2 rounds of 4 different questions. 2 rounds of 2 different questions. 4 questions, only you answer 2. Does everyone get that? Have I explained it? Daily double. Okay, so this is the first set of 2 questions. Please choose 1 to answer. What actions would you take to protect agricultural lands and improve food security in Saanich? What actions would you take to protect agricultural lands and improve food security in Saanich? The second option is, what would be your priority in addressing transportation issues in Saanich? What would be your priority in addressing transportation issues in Saanich? Please answer one of those questions, Ned Taylor.
Well, I'd love to answer both, but since I have to choose one, I'll talk about protecting our agricultural land. I think it is extremely important to be protecting our agricultural land. Having grown up in Saanich my entire life, I've always loved the Blenkinsop Valley. I think it is a beautiful place, a rural space and an urban place. So it's crucially important to protecting this. We simply can't develop into this gift of rich soil that we have. We're very lucky to have that. So instead of developing those areas, we must be densifying in our current urban areas. And part of this relates to my housing platform to allow garden suites and examine tiny house communities. We can densify in our current urban areas while protecting our local food production, our local farmers, and our agricultural land. Thank you very much.
I'm going to opt with the transportation question, which is a big issue of mine. Within the boundaries of Saanich, what we can do is a longer-term process of ensuring our land use planning aligns with the objective of getting more people out of personal vehicles to reduce traffic congestion. And we have those broad grant plans generally in Saanich, but there really isn't a lot of accountability to ensure our decisions follow that guidance. We need to improve on that front. Secondly, we need to advocate for a regional transportation authority. This is the only way we can deal with the current situation of 13 municipalities planning transportation within their boundaries, despite the fact that we all traverse many of those boundaries on our daily commutes. I would say the time is right to do that also, so I'm a little disheartened that we don't see more leadership on file. We have a receptive federal government when it comes to urban transportation. We have a lot of local, provincial representation in government, so the time is now.
Well, having just completed a successful Saanich Sunday Farmers Market, I'm going to address the first question. How to protect agricultural land and improve food security. Our farmers are working year-round. They are stressed. Instead of asking them to come forward with their concerns, I would like to be more proactive about sending people that can make decisions out to our farming community to get solid information about what they need. I don't know what they need. They know what they need. Let's start talking. Food security in Saanich, as one of the founders of the farmers market, we have provided for a number of farmers in Saanich to increase their income over this summer, and that is one other small way.
Believe it or not, our transportation system impacts our ability to grow food. So I would like to address the transportation issue. Transportation authority, no-brainer, absolutely. But the fact is, we are getting more cars on the road, the place is growing, we don't know what to do with it. They're parking in our neighborhoods in ways that we don't like. We need to sit down and take a closer look at what we want in terms of transportation. And I've been advocating for things like a transportation authority and an LRT system since about 1999. And that's not going away. We still need those things. If we'd actually started building LRT back in 2005, We probably have most of it done now for less cost than what it's costing for a sewage treatment plant that hasn't even started yet. So come on, guys. We can do this transportation piece. As Bike to Work president, that was a start, but that's just the beginning.
I was born and raised in the Okanagan. I'm a farm boy at heart. When I left the Okanagan to go to UVic and get my BA, I always used to go back in the summer and pick fruit on my dad's apple orchard. That transitioned to years later, me living in Saanich, and now I have the largest tomato garden in the neighborhood. But the problem is, we need to protect our agriculture. So one of the things I'm noticing a lot is there are a lot of fences popping up all over Saanich. Do I dare say the deer word out there? I think it's time we take action and have a humane call of the deer. And it's both for the people in town for safety reasons, and it's also for protecting those wonderful farms out on the peninsula. We have to do it, there are just too many. I also encourage the growth of such things that Marcia and Sean, and I give them full marks for the efforts in their gardens. The market was fabulous, because my sister runs one in the Okanagan. So I am very supportive of agriculture in Saanich. We have UCB, we have an ALR. Let's keep Saanich green.
Back in the early 1990s, when I was still in my mid-20s, I was the ministerial assistant to Bill Bartley, who had just come in November of '91 as the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. On his way into a cabinet meeting, he made an off-the-cuff remark about bringing an end to golf courses development on ALR lands. That resulted in me staying up till 3 in the morning, drafting a briefing note and laying the framework and working with then General Manager of the Agricultural Land Commission, Kurt Miller, to come up with legislation that was later passed as the Golf Course Moratorium Development Act. So in terms of protecting our food lands, I've been there, I've done that. I do think, however, that there are currently some properties, and I think of the Royal Oak Golf Course as one, where for many years now, we've had within our official community plan that to be developed. I think we need to protect the good quality agricultural land, but quite frankly, in terms of some of the scrub stuff, I think we should be willing to look at seeing some of it developed, and we should also be encouraging residences to do home gardens and the like.
I'd like to address the transportation issue. Currently, we actually do have 2 regional transportation services. The CRD's bike and walking trails, which are great, and the bus service, which is also regional. What we need is a transformational change, which is the Greater Victoria Regional Transportation Commission. It needs a provincially legislated mandate to provide a regional system on roads and bridges, parking, bikeways, bus lanes, rail, water, and any other mode that makes sense. We are a region. We don't all live and work in one community and never leave it. So it needs to be a regional plan. And it needs to be running as a single system. It needs good governance, operating responsibility, and expertise to plan and design long-term transportation improvements and set goals for increased bus riders, reduced emissions, reduced number of vehicles, and faster travel times. Then we'll be on the right pathway to keeping our region livable.
Thank you. I'd like to address the transportation issue. Ensuring transportation initiatives are properly utilized is one of my platforms. Shelburne Street Corridor, 12 traffic lights, 4-kilometer stretch. Bike lanes are a growing entity. They're going to be with us more and more. How do we make it a win-win for the bike, car, the drivability scooter, the pedestrian, the skateboarder? How do we make this network more of a win-win for all?
I too am going to answer the transportation question. We currently have a document called the Regional Transportation Plan. It's very long and it's very boring, but the one thing that it lacks is anything or any details for an LRT, or a light rail transit. And so my proposition would be to try to start working now to identify what that plan would look like. There's a lot of different versions of it, and if we don't have one municipality, we've got 13 different people's opinions on how that's going to look. We need to start working now so that we use our land appropriately, so that in the future, when we need the light rail, because of the density and the affordability of making it into reality, we need to know where that's going to be. And so we need a specific plan to identify a light rail transportation project.
Hi there. I'm going to answer the question about agriculture. As I am a farmer on the Toronto farm, it's the only nationally protected farm in Canada. I've written a book about it. Protecting farmland is no easy piece of cake. Now, most people in Saanich don't know this, but 90% of the agricultural land reserve is in the north. And here, what we have in Saanich is the urban containment boundary, a visionary piece of legislation that dictates use, and it's a regulated use. So when we have people that are out of zone and doing activities that impact the farmland, it's very bad. So the other thing that we need to do in order to protect farmland is we need to protect buffers. Like it says in the 2009 official community plan, the lack of buffers increases the amount of neighbor conflict, and it ends up that agriculture cannot be sustainable because it does not have the bugs and all the complex soil microorganisms. Thank you.
All right, second round of audience posed questions. How will you seek public input during the budget process? How will you seek public input during the budget process? And the second question, what will you do to engage youth in municipal politics? What will you do to engage youth in municipal politics? Rebecca Mercer.
Few tough questions. I'm going to go with the budget question. This has been a struggle for Saanich for some time, and Saanich is not alone in struggling with this issue. We currently have a series of budget meetings every year that are extremely long and difficult to follow for the average person. And the process is not easily understood by anyone, I dare to say, who doesn't have an accountant's background. I think what we need to do is make sure that when we survey our residents, for example, we're doing so in a way that doesn't just evaluate their satisfaction with their services, but we need to signal that, of course, there are trade-offs in terms of how we decide to allocate our resources as a municipality. It's easy for everyone to say they're totally satisfied with how things are. But when push comes to shove, what is it that we want to invest more resources in, and what are we going to give up in order to do that? So I think we need to do some better planning for our surveying that occurs every year with residents to align it with our resource allocation. I also like the participatory budget process.
Okay, engaging youth in municipal politics. In my spare time, this is something that really intrigues me. I have 3 sons at home, and they're all fascinated with politics, but they don't know how the process works. They ask me to tell them what they should do. One of my projects, my bucket list if you want to call it, is to work with others, and I've already started on that, to develop an interactive and interesting, hands-on kind of project aimed at grades 10 through 12, and to get into all the local schools and show them how community associations and your local municipality impact your lives every day. This is where to start, and if we can get those kids interested in the budget process, we won.
So, the budget process is something that most people glaze over when they see it. But I'm kind of fascinated by it as an economist. I sit down and want to know exactly how much money was raised in my neighborhood through taxes and other things, and how much is being spent in my neighborhood. I can't find that information out in the budget. So what's wrong with the idea of turning things on its head and realizing that we're partners in this budget? Come and meet with us as partners. Don't require us to go and see you if we have the time. actually set up a date to come to our community association as a staff person or as a counselor and sit down and go through the budget as it impacts our neighborhood. You'll get participation. You'll get participation from everybody in the neighborhood because they're interested in knowing where the next sidewalk's going to come from or what's going to happen when the environment starts to fall, where we're going to get the money to fix the streams and the storm water management systems and so on. We need to get more active and involved, and the way to do that is communication between staff and us directly.
Let's be honest, the budget process is boring. I'd like to talk about how we can engage the youth and get them really involved. That's what's important, because the youth are the future of Saanich. Our population is growing. I believe the demographic is getting older and older. And I'm one of those guys that's getting older and older every year. So I don't know what my vision will be like in 10 years from now. But I'd like to see youth get involved because they are indeed the future. And I think one of the things that we could encourage at the UBCM is to get a civics course back into our high schools. Teach people about the system so they can understand it and become active and become involved in it. And that's what's important. The youth have a right to have a voice. We have a very youthful candidate. Congratulations, Ned, on putting yourself forward. I'm really proud of that. That is what it's all about, engaging people of all ages, and youth are important as well.
You guys are engaging the red jacket, so
Well, I've certainly been engaging youth in my campaign, and I can guarantee you some of those people are going to emerge as candidates in the future. But I am here to talk about boring budget issues because we, as I mentioned, taxes have gone up 58% between 2006 and 2016. That is simply not sustainable. Saanich has been heavy on program spending and light on infrastructure spending. I think we need to switch that around. I think we need to look at where we can find efficiencies in terms of program spending, and I think we need to ensure that we're putting some investment into infrastructure. I don't see a lot of sidewalks being built in Saanich. I think that needs to change. I see our sports and recreation infrastructure aging out. I think that needs to change. Clearly, if I'm elected, there will be a strong message to the rest of Saanich Council and staff that the public has had enough in terms of these year after year tax increases. That's the message. I'm looking for your mandate to take that message to council and that message to staff.
Well, I also am going to be dealing with the budget question, and I think that it's important to recognize that to have proper participation in the process, there has to be understanding of it. And being one of the people who has attended all those boring budget meetings about one, it's very difficult when you go to them because you do not get you don't get a proper strategic overview of the budget. You're always down in the weeds. So that's one of the problems. I think in terms of surveying and initially engaging the public, we should use the tools that we already have at hand. We get tax notices, we get utility bills, we can be surveying everybody in Saanich who chooses to respond by having clear and effective questions being mailed out to you and getting your input on that. But I think more importantly, council needs to start by being a strategic leader and saying to us and to staff, we need you to bring us a budget that does not exceed the cost of living. None of us, very few of us, get raises beyond the cost of living. We need to have the same thing happen in Saanich. Thank you.
Thank you. Now you speak on the budget. Communication, obviously, is an important part. Better surveys, open forums. I believe we addressed it in question number 1 with regards to the role of the community associations. I believe they play an important part in the budget process as well. We need to work as a team and listen to you as a Saanich resident.
I'm going to answer the youth engagement question. I've had the pleasure of attending the Camosun Poli-Sci class for local government up at the Lansdowne campus, and I've been invited twice to talk to the students and kind of present to them my views on local government and also what it's like to be in the community as a younger person. So I will continue to do that as long as I'm invited, and I'll also, as a councillor, engage high schools and middle schools and even elementary schools if I have that opportunity. Just for the record, I know I'm already engaging youth because last election, it was during Halloween, and I had a young mother come up and tap me on the shoulder and said that her son keeps wanting to be a Sean Newby for Halloween. So,
I would also like to talk about youth engagement. As a we've been homeschooling our daughter Lola for the last 5 years, and she has just become part of everything that we've done, from the conservation and our activism in the community. But if everyone would like to turn around right now, in the doorway you will see Fernando, who is 18 at Claremont, who is on the, he is my canvas captain, and I am so happy to be a part of a group called Social Environmental Alliance, where we have created a committee where we didn't expect Victor to die, but we've been working on the 2018 election preparations, and we have engaged so many youth, and it has been wonderful having mentors like Ben Isaac and Jeremy Loveday and Seb King, and I really think it's important engaging the youth, and that is something I truly enjoy and have been doing a long time. Thank you.
I'm not sure why, but I feel a need to answer the youth question. So I just graduated from Reynolds Secondary a few months back, and in the last few months of our semester we were going through a provincial election campaign. And we were actually lucky enough to have debates hosted in our gymnasium, or all candidates meetings, whatever you want to call them. And I think that was really important. Everybody was excited to come down and even ask questions to the candidates. So that's something that we should definitely be encouraging in our high schools and university campuses. And another thing, I think we should be using university campuses as polling stations, or at least working to. One of the reasons I think often you see students or young people not getting out to vote is because they don't know how to vote or where to vote. They don't feel they have the time. But if we have a polling station at that university campus that they're attending, I think that will definitely bring up youth voter turnout, so that's something that we're to do. Thank you.
Just before I turn it over for the candidates for their final closing comments, which they do get 90 seconds to do that, I just wanted to let you know that through continuing studies at UVic, to get over this notion that budgeting is boring or that somehow the totality of municipal services and regulatory authority is incomprehensible, Erwin Henderson and I are offering 2 1.5-hour sessions on September 28th and October 5th, and we call it Municipal Law and Budgeting 101. And so if you really want the very high-level overview, please do sign up. It's free through UVic Continuing Studies. So the final thing that we have to do is to allow the candidates to give us their closing statements, and then we'll do just a very few thank yous, in particular to St. Aidan Church for allowing us to use this wonderful facility. So we'll start off with Marcia Henderson.
In the past, Saanich has had some councils who've been able to work together with tremendous vision and bring lasting benefits far beyond their terms. My vision is to find common ground and work with other council members to bring that kind of lasting benefit back, specifically with regard to developing forward-thinking and flexible strategy. Our official community plan is a document of policy, but without workable and practical strategy, it's difficult to make that plan a reality. There's already a base of good work happening at Saanich. I'm aware of it through my community involvement and just kind of being around there often. We've got a food security task force working towards a food strategy. We have a transportation group working towards a transportation strategy, but we lack a comprehensive housing strategy. In my work in the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee, that's been a big issue. Right now, we're often in a reactive mode in Saanich. My vision is that we are more practically proactive. I've invested a great deal of time and energy, and sometimes my own money, in the Saanich community. I've learned how the system works and where it doesn't work so well. I have the experience to transition into council and proven ability to bring change. Thank you.
For over 20 years, I've been building community based on our shared values and vision. I learned about those shared values by getting involved. Before that, I certainly held lots of opinions, but after working with many diverse communities, from the Chamber of Commerce to back to work in the Gorge-Tillman Community Association, I was able to use my skills to develop those relationships and partnerships that work in positive environments to find solutions to problems and build our community. Simply put, we work towards the shared values we all held. As an economist and business owner, I'm solutions-oriented, fiscally responsible, and committed to addressing budget and tax management, infrastructure, and resources. I believe that affordable, accessible housing and transportation planning is a priority. I cannot say this enough. These two issues go hand in hand. With proven leadership skills, I have worked with our community to create lasting partnerships in a vibrant neighborhood with a focus on collaboration and engagement. We must preserve what is unique and irreplaceable in Saanich. Accountability and transparency is critical to our governance, and if elected to council, my commitment will be to empower our neighborhoods and deliver the best services to Saanich and its residents. I am truly an independent candidate, and I'm accessible at any time, so with your support, we can get this done.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was born in a very small town called Winfield in the Okanagan. I was blessed to have two wonderful parents. My father was on the school board for 16 years. He served on the water board. He had the same name, Mark Pollard. That's a legacy to live up to. So I moved out of Winfield, obviously, to come down here to go get my degree at UVic. And now I want to create a new kind of legacy, and that's a legacy of caring, compassion, and competence, if I am so lucky to be chosen a councillor in Saanich. Because that's what it's all about. It's about caring for the individual. It's about being competent, and the leadership positions I've done over the years illustrate that. We took 34 blocks in Saanich when I first started the Block Watch program. I doubled it in 17 years to 68. That's an indication of results, performance, and it's also an indication of caring. It really, truly cares about your community when you take that time, that effort, and get that kind of a reward. Block Watch remains the safest program in Saanich for any individual. And that's why we have safe programs in Saanich. That's why we have a great police force. But I'd also like to close on another issue which has not been addressed, and that's parks and recreation. We have jewels in this city. We have Elk Lake, which needs an aerator. We have Swan Lake, which needs that thing completed across that beautiful walk on the boardwalk. And thirdly, we need to make our third jewel, Cedar Hill Golf Course, sustainable. Thank you.
So since 1996, I've worked as a government relations consultant, which is a polite term for lobbyist. That means I have experience in getting legislative changes at the provincial government level and at the federal government level. The reason we have C-SPAN building Coast Guard ships is because I helped C-SPAN successfully lobby for that contract from the government of Canada. I've chaired cabinet subcommittees when I worked at the provincial legislature. I worked there for 7 years, including 4.5 years as a ministerial assistant, which is the chief of staff to the cabinet minister. And like I said, during the time I lived out in Langford, for all but one of those years, I was on Langford's Planning and Zoning Committee. The simple thing is if I'm elected, it would be a clear message to Saanich and the CRD that enough is enough. That you want to see the line held on terms of taxes, and that you want something seriously done about this housing crisis. I will vote to rescind EDPA. I will vote to end Saanich's markup on the water that the CRD supplies. And I will also vote for improved infrastructure spending, including in our sports and recreation facilities. You know, it's really a critical by-election. Who you elect in this by-election will set the tone in terms of what direction Saanich heads in. I don't want to live in a community, and I won't be able to live in a community where we've allowed things to get to the point where only the hyper-wealthy, most of whom aren't even here most of the year, are occupying all the residences. We need to have a diverse community where ordinary people, middle class, working class people can also afford to live here. If you share that vision, vote for me.
I would ask you to take a minute and imagine Saanich 10 years from now. What will it look like? First, it will be a place where people of all ages, from students to seniors, can afford to live, allowing people to age in place while traveling easily across the region due to coordinated transportation and transit plans. Residents and businesses will come to Saanich and stay in Saanich because the property taxes that they face will not exceed their ability to pay. And finally, it will be a place where residents enjoy their property, but can also appreciate the parks and preserves around Saanich that Saanich will be maintaining. This vision that I have of Saanich starts with the essentials of the platform that I developed by talking to residents over the last 3 years. So as I said earlier, I commit to bringing the necessary fiscal expertise and accountability to Saanich Council. I will be respecting private property rights while balancing environmental stewardship, and I will work collaboratively to update local area plans and reduce local conflict. And I will use the skills that I developed over my career and at the Pension Corporation to do all of those things so that we can move Saanich into a better place than it currently finds itself. Thank you.
We all stand in front of you and find candidates, varied backgrounds. I'm asking for your support, your vote. I'll work hard and I will listen. I may not have answered every question tonight with the best of my ability, but I'll work hard. I'll protect the good things that Saanich has done, things that residents have advocated for. I'll be able to sit on committees. I am who I am. And I'm based on facts, thought process. Community engagement is important. I'll bring you ideas. Bylaws may need to be revisited. Ideas of 20 years ago may need revisiting. I have 6 children, ages 10 to 28. We sit at the dinner table every night. I listen to their ideas. I want Saanich to be their home. I'm here to get things done. I'm here to make Saanich even better. Thank you.
My vision for 2027, I want to be hopeful and I want to be realistic, progressive, and also cautious. I want to see something like a solid, light rail transit plan in place, so that when the funding and density when the funding and density are appropriate, we can, as a community, start moving people around the region more sustainably. I want to know that Saanich residents feel that their council listens to them, understands their concerns, and works with them to find solutions. I want Saanich to be environmentally progressive while maintaining the rights of individual property owners. I want home builders to feel that what is acceptable at the beginning of a project will ultimately be what is accepted at the end of the project. We also need to create more places for people to live. I don't want to see a below 0.05% vacancy rate in 2027. We need to work with the province to create more places for students to live so Gordon Head doesn't keep ending up like just chock full of rooming houses. We have a balance between government-funded affordable housing and working with businesses to create sustainable growth. Finally, I want to know that in 2027, people feel safe to live in Saanich, they can afford to live in Saanich, businesses are welcome to do business in Saanich, and ultimately they're proud to live, work, and play in Saanich.
My vision for Saanich 2027 is is to see Farmlands Trust, affordable housing for all, co-op housing, co-op business. And I would like to just in conclusion say thank you very much for coming tonight. We cannot build ourselves out of this housing crisis. We must regulate this market-based speculation. And I'm very proud to say my campaign has been 100% conservationist funded and endorsed by many of my conservation heroes that I write about in my book, Saving Farmland, including Joan Alston Stewart, Nancy Turner, Bryony Penn, Misty McDuffie, Darcy Matthews, Nicola Lockton, Harold Steve, Scott Donsey, and many more. David Coverley, thanks for insisting and giving me the courage to stand up here and run for Senate in the by-election. There is much brilliance for us to access here in our communities in Saanich. A vote for Natalie Chambers is a vote for a strong, reliable, and independent voice for sustainability on Saanich Council, people, place, and planet over profit. You will find Natalie Chambers at the top of the ballot. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the community associations for putting on this event and for all of you for coming out and giving your time and attention to this election. I'm sure a lot of you have been listening to me tonight and thinking to yourself, how old is that guy? So for those of you who were wondering, I am 18 and the youngest candidate in this race. Thank you. I think a young person is exactly what's needed on Saanich Council. I'll offer a new perspective and a voice for an underrepresented generation. Additionally, I'm prepared with a full plan to address housing affordability, continue Vic Durban's exceptional environmental work, expand car fee infrastructure, and give you better access to council and Saanich staff. I am offering a vision for Saanich and a full plan to achieve that vision. I'm Ned Taylor, and I'm asking for your vote on September 23rd. Thank you so much.
We are very much in a period of transition right now in Saanich, both at Municipal Hall, but also more broadly in our communities due to our demographic shift, our increasing diversity, and also the significant development interests in our region. We have a lot of work to do to build bridges among and between council and staff, to repair our reputation, frankly, with the business community, and to restore credibility and goodwill in the eyes of our residents. Through my approach tonight and throughout my campaign, I hope I've illustrated my ability to carry forward the very principled legacy of my mentor, late Councillor Vic Durban, to adopt a pragmatic and thoughtful approach to problem solving, and also to change the tone to one that is more cooperative and one that's more open-minded. Against the advice of many, I have published very detailed platform positions, and they're on my website. I encourage you to have a look, to engage in some spirited debate with your friends and neighbors, and ultimately to consider my candidacy for Saanich Council. My website is voterebecca.ca. Thank you very much for doing your due diligence and coming out tonight to consider the perspectives and viewpoints of all of these candidates. It's a very impressive group.
Big round of applause. I'm glad I did my one job correctly. Now, I don't mind to be corrected, but I had one thing to do tonight, so I was able to execute that thing. No, it's fine. On behalf of my family and myself, I thank you all for putting yourselves out to assist in being leaders in Saanich, because it is not an easy task. You attract criticism from all fronts. You are personally called to account, and so it's a very thankless job, and the fact that you're so fundamentally dedicated to our community is really astounding, so thank you all. I'm going to turn it over to John just to do the last few thank yous, and then you can get out into the cool September air.
We should all remember Vic Durban. His unexpected passing is what created this by-election, and the reason we're all here. I want to congratulate all of you for putting yourselves forward and conducting yourselves in such a civilized manner in this debate. We want to thank the committee who worked on putting this together. We want to thank St. Hayes. We want to thank Gordon in the background who's provided all the technical stuff for us so you folks can all hear us. We want to thank our moderator, and we have a small token of our appreciation. Thank you very much. And also, the cost for this debate are being shared amongst the 5 community associations, which again are the Mount Ptolemy Community Association, the Camosun Community Association, the Gordon Head Residents Association, the Academy Bay Residents Association, and the Black Cedarville Community Association. And we are going to be making a donation to the Shelburne Community Kitchen on behalf of St. Dave's for thanking them for providing this venue tonight. But I want to thank all of you for coming. Please come on Thursday night. Any of the questions that were submitted here that weren't used tonight, the written questions, will be given to the moderator, Brenda McBain. Brenda wants to take another bow, and we'll see her all again on Thursday night. That one will be starting at 6:30 p.m. This was 7 p.m. That one will be starting at 6:30 p.m. Church of the Nazarene on Water Street. So again, thank you all for coming. Same format.